Do you know someone who wrote more than 200 love letters and never got a single reply? His name was Steven, and for 3 years, he wrote to Karen every week, sometimes twice. They weren't emails, not texts, real letters, handwritten, folded, sealed, like he was sending a piece of his soul every time. But why keep writing if she never answered? Was it hope or just madness wearing the mask of love? Steven wasn't always like this. He used to laugh. He had friends, a job, a life. But after Karen left, something inside him snapped. She didn't say goodbye, no fight, no note, no explanation. One day she was there, the next gone. Do you know how heavy silence can feel when you don't know why you were left? He tried calling. She changed her number. He drove to her old apartment, empty, asked her friends. They avoided him. So, what do you do when the world shuts its door in your face and the only person who made you feel alive disappears like a ghost? You write, you bleed into paper, you scream into silence, hoping that maybe, just maybe, she's still listening. But still, why didn't she respond? Was she angry? Was she trying to protect herself? Or was there someone else? That question haunted him. And the letters? They became a ritual. Every Sunday evening, after dinner, after the dishes, after the loneliness settled in, he'd sit by his desk and write. Some letters were 2 pages, some were 5, some had no words, just drawings, or pieces of poems they once read together. He talked about how his week went, what song reminded him of her, how the world felt colder without her laugh. He didn't mail them to her house. She didn't have one. He mailed them to her name at the old bookstore she used to love. The owner said she never picked them up. But Steven kept writing anyway because when you lose someone without warning, without closure, sometimes writing becomes your only way to stay sane. But here's the twist. It wasn't just about her anymore. The letters became his home. A world where she still existed, where things made sense, where he wasn't just forgotten. Have you ever loved someone who disappeared before you understood why? And if they showed up again, would you still want answers? Or would the silence already be louder than anything they could ever say? Now here's the haunting part. 3 years later, Karen dies. And suddenly, the letters matter again. Not to her, but to the people left behind. At her funeral, Steven stood outside. He wasn't invited, of course not. But he came anyway. He had to see her, one last time. That's when her sister approached him. "Are you Steven?" she asked. He nodded. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just said one thing that turned his entire world upside down. "She kept all your letters. She kept all your letters." Steven froze. He stared at Karen's sister like she had just told him the world was flat, like everything he believed for 3 years was a lie. "What do you mean?" he whispered. "They were in a wooden box," she said, "locked, hidden under her bed. She labeled them, Steven, never read, never throw away." She never read them. She never threw them away. Why would someone hold on to hundreds of unread letters but never open a single one? Steven's mind spiraled. What if she was angry? What if opening them meant reopening a wound she couldn't bear? But then, why not destroy them? Why not burn the reminders of someone you're trying to forget? Unless she wasn't trying to forget. She was trying to remember without reliving the pain. Do you think it's possible to love someone and still choose silence over healing? Karen's sister handed him a small note. It was dated just 1 week before Karen passed. It read, "If anything happens to me, please give this to him. He deserves the truth, even if I never had the courage to say it myself." Steven's hands trembled as he unfolded the paper. Just one sentence inside. One line, but it shattered everything he thought he knew. "I never stopped loving you, but I was sick and I didn't want you to watch me disappear." Sick? She had cancer. Stage 4. Diagnosed the same week she left him. She didn't run away because she stopped loving him. She left because she thought love meant protecting him from watching her die. But was that protection? Or was it just fear in disguise? Would you rather be loved through your worst days or remembered at your best? And if someone you love is fading, do you think they have the right to decide your distance? Steven sat in silence. He thought about the letters, the jokes he wrote, the pain he poured, the nights he cried mid-sentence. All this time he thought he was alone in that pain, but she felt every word, without reading a single one. Karen didn't want pity. She didn't want to become someone else's burden, but she didn't know. To Stephen, loving her was never a burden. It was the only thing that kept him alive. They buried her with one of his letters, the first one. The one where he begged her to stay, the one she never opened, but never let go of. Do you believe? A love story can be written by two people, even when one of them isn't there to read it? After the funeral, Stephen didn't go home. He went back to the apartment they once shared, the one she left without a goodbye. It had been 3 years, but the memories, they didn't age a day. The chipped blue mug she used every morning, the tiny crack in the mirror where she'd leave lipstick kisses, even the calendar, still marked on the day she left. She had vanished from his life, but she never really left. Stephen sat by the window, holding the last note she wrote. "I never stopped loving you." That one sentence echoed louder than all the silence she gave him. But then a question pierced through the grief. Why didn't she just say goodbye? He opened the wooden box. Every letter he wrote, still sealed, all 204 of them. But something was off. Letter No. 75 had a faint mark on the envelope, a tiny smudge, like someone had cried while holding it. Could she have opened just one? Or did she read all of them and resealed them to pretend she didn't? Why would someone hide the fact that they were reading your heart? Stephen started to wonder, was this story really over? Or had he only seen the version she wanted him to see? He looked closer inside the box. At the bottom, beneath the last letter, was a small folded paper. Not like the others, not sealed, and definitely not his. It was in her handwriting, and it said, "To whoever finds this, if Stephen is reading, it means I'm gone. Please tell him, I heard him. I read every word. I loved every line. I just couldn't bear to answer, because once I started, I would have never been able to stop." Stephen broke down. All this time he thought he was writing into a void, but she was right there, living, dying, and loving him from a distance he couldn't cross. Do you know what it's like to speak for years and find out someone was listening all along? He wasn't alone, he never was. But the weight of what-ifs felt heavier than ever. What if he had gone to her city? What if he had ignored her silence and knocked on her door? Would she have let him in? Or would she have cried behind the door, never answering, but knowing he was there? And here's the cruelest part of grief. It doesn't end with answers. It begins with them. Stephen took the letters and made a decision. One that might surprise you. He didn't keep them. He didn't burn them. He mailed every single letter back to himself. Postmarked, stamped, returned. It was his way of saying, I sent these to you, but maybe they were always for me. Do you believe letters hold power, even if they're never opened? Or is the real power in the person who wrote them, refusing to give up hope? Years passed. The world moved on. Phones replaced letters, love became a swipe, and silence became the norm. But Stephen never forgot. Not because he couldn't, but because he chose not to. Every year, on the same day she left, he'd walk to the post office, drop one letter into the mailbox, and send it to himself. People thought he was strange, but they didn't know those letters weren't about her anymore. They were about memory, healing, forgiveness. They were about a man who stayed soft in a world that tried to harden him. And then something unexpected happened. A local bookstore, where Stephen used to sit and write, published a small book. Title: Letters to the One Who Vanished. It was anonymous, but readers knew. Each letter in the book was raw, unfiltered, written not to be famous, but to be honest. It went viral, not because of who wrote it, but because of what it said. Lines like, "Even if you don't reply, I'll still love you. Silence is loud when you expect music. If you ever come back, I'll still be here." Millions connected. Thousands wrote back to an author who never asked to be known. One reader said, "This book saved my life. I thought I was the only one still waiting." Another wrote, "It made me write my first letter, to someone who will never read it, and that's okay. But what happened to Stephen? He never claimed the book, never revealed his name. He said everything he needed to say on paper, and that was enough. People asked, was Karen real? Was this story true? Let me ask you something. If you've ever waited for someone, if you've ever loved without answers, if you've ever written a message and deleted it before sending, then yes, Karen was real, Stephen was real, because you are them. This wasn't just a story, it was a mirror. And sometimes, we don't need a happy ending, we need a real one. So if you're still carrying unsent words, maybe tonight, write them, even if no one reads them, even if they never reply. Because sometimes, the most powerful letters are the ones we write just to remember who we are.